the support for 8.2. So it actually more, I think, goes along with the 8.1. Remember where we did those kind of funny factoring problems that had the 4 terms, and we put the first 2 in a group and the second 2 in a group, and then pulled out what was common from those groups? We're going to do some more practice on that today, and also kind of what leads up to that. So let's look at number 1. So this is kind of like it's almost halfway through one of those problems. It's already past the part where they put the first 2 in a group and the second 2 in a group, and they pulled out what was in common. And remember when they pulled out what was in common? After you did that, the 2 parentheses matched. So, and then what did you do? You pulled that out. So we're kind of to that point in the problem already, okay? So one of the factors of this one is just going to be the C minus 4. And then you put left over what's in the second parentheses, and here's how we get to what's left over. Remember, anytime you pull something out of both areas, you have to divide by it. That's how you find out what is left. Well, look what happens if you divide both areas of that by the C minus 4 that you pulled out. It's going to cancel those. That's why the other parenthesis is the 2 things that were pulled out, which were the X and the plus T. So that's why it ends up looking like that. Why is this? Oh, wait, we're looking at. Is that what y'all's first one looks like? Okay, good. Okay, I had 2 of them for about a minute. Okay, number 2 is the same kind of problem. 5x, 2x minus 3, minus 4, 2x minus 3. So again, it's already kind of like it is done that first step where it put the first 2 in a group and the second 2 in a group and pulled out what was in common. Right. These 2 match, which means I can pull that out. 2x minus 3 will be a factor, which means the other factor would be what you had pulled out, right? 5x minus 4. All right, number 3. All right, now we got to do the whole thing because it doesn't have it where it already has the stuff pulled out with the parentheses looking the same. But there are 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. There's nothing in common with all 4 of them. So I'm going to put the first 2 in a group and the second 2 in a group. Just looking at the first group, I've got x cubed plus 4x squared. You want to pull out as much as you can that you see in both terms. Right, the x2. Right, I can't pull out any more x's than squared because this one doesn't have any more than squared to pull out. This one has more, but they both have to have it in order for it to pull out. So I'm pulling out x squared and putting in parentheses what's left. So remember how you find out what's left, whatever you pulled out, the x squared, that's what you are going to divide by and put in parentheses what's left over. So let's see, if I had x3 and I pulled out x2, what's left?
Just one x.
Just an x. Plus,
4.
if I pulled out the x squared, the only thing left of this term is the 4. Now we're going to the second group. Now remember, what do you want this parentheses to be?
X plus 4.
The same as this one. So we need to keep that in mind always. That's going to help us a lot with our signs. Okay? Now, looking at these terms, what do they have in common? There's a number that goes into both of those. What number goes into 7 and 28? It goes in there 4 times, but what's the number that goes in there?
4.
The 7, right? So it goes
Awesome.
in there 4 times, yes. But 7 goes into 7 once,
1 time.
and 28 4 times.
4 times. Yeah.
What goes into both of those? So 7 is what I'm going to pull out. Now I just need to decide whether or not I need it to be positive 7 or negative 7. Because I need to look at what I want my signs to be. What do you want your x term to be? Positive or negative?
Positive.
Whatever this one is. Positive. What is this x term?
-7.
It's negative right now, which means the sign needs to change. If the sign needs to change, you got to take out a negative along with whatever else you're pulling out. That's what's going to change the signs. So let's see.
So what did you, Ms. Hanson, what did you say would make the sign negative since it's already a -7?
Right, so when I'm looking in this parenthesis right here, I can see that inside of it, I need my x to be positive.
Okay.
If I pulled out the 7 and just as divided by positive 7, it would cancel the 7, but I would have negative x. I want my x to be positive. So the way I change that sign from this negative means I need to divide it by a negative, right? That's what's going to change it to positive. So that's what told me I needed to pull out a negative along with the 7. So if I divide these both by that -7 that I pulled out, everything in here should be exactly what this is. So this -7 was canceled by this, right? If you divide that, you get a +1. So the only thing that's left is the x. What's -28 divided by -7? +4. If your signs were wrong there, that would have told you, oh, go back and pull out a negative to change the signs. Because now look, do these match?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's one of your factors. What's your other factor?
X squared minus.
These terms, right? The x squared minus 7. Now, sometimes if you have an x squared left in there, you'll be able to go again if it's a difference of perfect squares, which we're going to see in a little bit. But why isn't this one a difference of perfect squares? X squared is a perfect square. I could use x and x to get it, but 7's not. Right? What are you going to use? What's the same number that you're going to multiply together to get 7? There's not one. Right? So that's why I can't go any further with that one. But you do check it if you still have an x squared in your parentheses. Like if this would have been x squared minus 9, then I could have done x plus 3x minus 3. But if that, since that 7 keeps me from that. Okay, I'm going to skip 4 and 5. I'm going to come back to those at the end. They're a completely different kind of problem. And 6, 4, 5, and 6. So I'll do 7 and 8, and then I'll come back and do 4, 5, 6. Because 7 and 8 stem right after this. All right, number 7, v to the third minus 16v squared minus 9v plus 144.
Hello.
Uh-oh, Destiny, you're still unmuted.
Let me find that.
So, looking at these 4 terms, nothing's in common with them, right? So that's what leads me to the grouping. Okay? Group the first 2, group the second 2. Looking at my first group, what do they have in common? How much V do they have in common? 2. So pull out V2. Put in parentheses, what is left? If I divide these both by that V2 that I pulled out.
V minus 16.
Right. I had 3, I pulled out 2, so I'm left with just a V. Minus, I put all the V's out of that one, so I'm just left with the 16. Now, let's keep that in mind. That needs to be V minus 16 when I'm done. So let's think about our signs first before we do anything else. What do I need my V to be, positive or negative?
Positive.
I need it to end up positive. Is my V term right now positive or negative?
Negative.
It's negative. That tells me I'm going to have to change signs. And you change signs by pulling out the negative. Now, let's think about what's going to be in common. I'm going to put, because this isn't going to be a V minus 16. I got to make it, it's going to be that immediate somehow. Let's think about, what do you want your first term to be? Positive V. I've already pulled out the negative. Who else do you think? So this, hopefully it's going to be negative 9. Right? If I need to divide this by negative 9
In order for it to be positive.
it's be a V. So let's divide this. So now I just need to make sure what? That 144 can divide by 9 or negative 9 also. So
It can.
I'm just going to do 144 divided by negative 9, which gives me negative 16. And isn't that what I'm going to need after the V anyway?
Yes.
So pull out negative 9, which means that's what I divide both of these by. So let's see, if I pulled out negative 9 from this term, all I'm left with is the V. And I just did this in my calculator. What was positive 144 divided by negative 9?
Negative.
Negative 16. Match, match. So that's one of your factors, is the matching. So V minus 16. What's your other one?
V squared.
V squared.
Negative 9.
Negative 9. So I need to check. There's no V squared left in here, which means there is no more factoring that can happen. Is there a V squared left in this one?
Yes.
Is that a perfect square also?
Yes.
Yes. Which means I can go further with that one. This one I'll just bring down, since it doesn't have a V squared in it, I'll just bring it down. This one will go again. Difference of perfect squares. How do you get V squared? Who needs to come here and here?
V.
V and V to get V squared. What's going to be the same number that you multiply together to get 9?
3.
Plus and minus 3.
Good, 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 good. So plus 3 and minus 3.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter which way you go. That's a good point. It could have done minus 3 plus 3. All right, number 8 is another one like this. W to the third minus WP squared minus 49W squared plus 49P squared. Right? Nothing in common with all of them. So put them in the groups. Now be careful with this one. In the first group, this one has W3. This one just has W1.
Miss Hanson,
Yeah.
how do you know which ones to put in groups?
Just always put, there are some teachers that would tell you want to rearrange this and group certain things together. I just put the first two terms in it. I go, this term,
You
this
go
term,
to Millie.
parentheses, and then open this one in front of this sign, whether it's a plus or a minus.
Okay.
So again, I just put always the first two terms in a group. When I get to that second sign, I close it off and start my second group.
Okay. Gotcha.
So this one has W3. This one just has W1, right? The 2 is for the P. So this one, the only W I can pull out is that one. I can even pull out W2 this time, right? Because this one only has W1. So all I can pull out is W1. I can't pull out any P because this one doesn't have any P. So the only thing in common between these two terms is W1. So that's what I'll put out in front. Put in your parentheses what's left. How do you find out what's left? Whatever you pull out, that's what you're going to take out from each one. If I took a W out of this, what's left? W2. Minus, if I took the W out of this one, what's left?
P squared.
P squared. So in other words, that's what I'm going to want to be left in the other one. So if I'm going to want W squared to be the first thing here, what am I going to have to divide this by? I need all this to go away. So I'm going to have to cancel it, right? By dividing by negative 49. Which means that's what I'm pulling out. If that's what you need to divide that by, to just have a W squared by, that means that's what you're pulling out, and you're dividing both of them by negative 49. So here at the front, what am I left with? If I divide by negative 49, all I'm left with is W2, W squared, positive divided by a negative. So that's going to be minus P squared, which is what I want it to be. So put your matching pair in a group. W squared minus P squared. And what's your other factor? W, negative 49. The only one you're worried about that's going to go any further is if you have a W squared. So this one kind of looks like a difference of squares a little bit because of the 49. Right? I could use 7 and 7 to get 49, but the W is not squared. Your W is not squared, doesn't matter what the other number is. Because you would need WW to do difference of squares. I can't do that with just the W. So look at this one though. Its W is squared, which means I do need to look at the other one. That's squared too. Even though it's not a number, it's still a difference of squares. They're both squared, which means this one can go again. How do you get W squared? What needs to go here and here? W. This is just not a number, but I can still use the same thing times itself to get P squared. I just did it with the W. What am I going to use here and here to get P squared? What are your signs? And it doesn't matter what order. It's always one positive, one negative. Doesn't matter what order. This one couldn't go any further. So just bring it down. Okay, so now back to 4, 5, and 6. Number 4. It says solve. Anytime you're solving and your S is squared, program. You can go to your program, right? That's a quad because it's squared and you're trying to solve it to get your 2 answers. That's when you can go to your quad program. Anytime you're trying to solve an S or X, whatever it is, squared, and it's asking you for the solutions or solve, you can take that to your quad program. I am going to work just this one out. Woo. If I didn't use my quad program to get my 2 answers, I would set it equal to 0, which it's done. Factor, they have an S in common, so I would take that out. Put in parentheses what's left. So if I divided them both by S, what will be left here? Just an S. Plus, if I took the S out of here, I'm left with the 4. Those will be your 2 factors. I'm done factoring. So here's my 2 factors. Set them equal to 0 and solve them for S. This one's already solved. So one of my solutions is 0. This one I have to subtract 4 from both sides. So that solution would be -4. If I put this in my program, what do? I go on PRGM, down to program if you've got more than the quad. Hit enter. Enter again. And it's going to ask you for your A, B, and C. Right? So let's see. Looking at the original thing. Once you set it equal to 0, A is what's in front of your S squared. What is this number? 1. B is what's in front of S. 4. What's your C?
0.
0, right? There's not another term behind it. Your C is always the number that doesn't have the letter hooked onto it. Which if there's not a number that doesn't have a letter hooked onto it, it's automatically 0. So if you put that in your quad program, A is 1. B is 4. And C is 0. There's your 2 solutions, 0 and -4. Is that what you got? Good. Which is what I got as my 2 answers here. Okay, so we're going to do the other 2 using the program. Let's look at number 5. (3c to the 3rd) minus 16c squared equals 81c. So first of all, it's c to the 3rd, which actually means it's going to have 3 answers this time. So it's not even quad right now. Quad means your highest exponent is a 2. But I still want to get all the terms together on one side and set it equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract the 81c from both sides to set that side equal to 0. If I subtract 81c, I'm just going to put it back here at the end of my other side because I can't put it under the c squared and I can't put it under the c to the 3rd because it's not a like term with any of those. So now let's see what I have over here. I've got 3c to the 3rd minus 16c squared minus 81c equals 0. So it's still not quad, but what do all 3 of these terms have?
C.
They've all got a c. Pull the c out. That's going to be one of your factors. If I pull a c out, that means I'm dividing all these by c. So in other words, they're all just going to lose a C. So this one's going to turn into what?
C squared.
3C squared minus 16C minus 81. So here's one of my factors. So that's going to set that equal to 0. Solve it for C. It's already solved. So one of your answers is going to be 0. Look how I can find my other two now. Now what's inside here is quad. It is squared. So now you can use your quad program to, how many answers does a quad program find? 2. So it's going to have 3 solutions. It's going to have this one. Then the other 2 are going to come from this by putting that in my quad program to getting the other 2 solutions. So what is A? What's in front of C squared?
3.
So your A is going to be 3. What's your B?
Negative 16.
Negative 16. And what's your C?
Negative.
Negative 81. Put that in your quad program. That'll give you your other 2 solutions. So again, go back to quad. A is 3, B is negative 16, and C is negative 81. Enter. If you get crazy decimals, hit enter again. And there's your other 2 solutions. Ooh, which is not right. Did I type in something wrong?
I got the same thing.
You got a crazy number?
Yeah.
Did I type in something wrong?
What'd you get? Bless you. Stop.
Look at the paper.
Oh, we put. Oh,
What's that?
It's 18.
So it's not actually going to change too much. That's an 18.
Oh, well, that's weird because I had 18 on my paper, but I was just copying.
Going with
it.
me?
Yeah.
That was totally wrong. So this is just 18 all the way down. So in your quad program for your B, it should have been what? Negative 18 instead of negative
I
16.
guess we all funny because I did 18 on my paper too and still did 16 in the calculator.
That's what they did it here too. They just kept trusting me that I was right and I'm not right.
We trust you.
So when you type in your quad program, put in negative 18 for the B.
You get 9 negative 3.
There you go. So quad. So A is 3, B is negative 18, and C is negative 81. There's your other 2 solutions. So when you type in your answer, just remember, you already got 1 solution, right? This was 1 solution. Then once I whittled it down to C squared, then I said, oh, now I can use my quad to get my other 2 answers. So your other 2 answers are 9 and negative 3. So your 3 answers are 0, 9, and negative 3. All right, number 6. This is the last one. 8a to the 3rd equals 8a. All right, it's not quad yet because it's not squared, but hopefully I can turn it into quad. And I'm going to try that by putting all the terms on one side and set it equal to 0. So subtract the 8a from both sides first. So now I have 8a to the 3rd minus 8a equals 0. Now when I look over here, I have a little, actually more than just a in common. What else do they both have? You can pull out 8 also. But they do have an A in common, and that's what's important, is pulling out that A. And putting in parentheses what's left after I pull out 8a? So let's see, if I divide them both by 8a,
8 squared.
so,
Or 8a. No, I'm sorry, a squared.
right, the 8's will be gone. I took out an a, so I'm left with a squared minus, be careful here, what is 8a over itself? Anything over itself is
A.
just a 1, right? Just a plain 1. I took out the a and I took out the 8. You're not left with nothing though. Remember, you're dividing.
Right.
Anytime you divide something by itself, you are left with 1. So here's my factors. Done factor. Well, actually, I'm not done factoring. So this is going to make one solution, right? So set it equal to 0. Solve it for a, which just means divide it by 8. So a equals 0. There's one of your answers. Now, I can put this in quad, which absolutely, because it's squared now, which means it's quad. So if I put it in quad, be careful what your a, b, and c are. What's in front of a squared?
1.
1. Now remember, your b is what's in front of the middle term. Right? This is your c. Your number that doesn't have a letter hooked on it is your c. 0 is your b. That's right. Now this one actually is not too bad of a factor. It's a difference of squares. Right? 1's a perfect square. Which means if I factored this again, I'd do a and a for a squared. To get 1, I need to do 1 times 1. 1's positive, 1's negative. So there's your factors. If you set them equal to 0 and solve them for a, that means here I'd have to subtract 1 from both sides. So a would also equal negative 1. Here I'd have to add 1 to both sides. So a equals positive 1. So your answers are 0, negative 1, and positive 1. If you did do your program, make sure you type in the right things for a, b, and c. A is 1, because that's what's in front of your squared term. B is 0, because there is no term that just has an a. So if I put in 0, and then c is the constant, which is the number that doesn't have a letter, so it's negative 1. And there's your other two answers, like we got when we did it by hand with the factoring, positive 1 and negative 1. Which is what we got when we said, oh, I can take that to quad, or if you recognize right off the bat that that's just a difference of squares, you could just do it by factoring. It's the same thing. You're going to get the same answer. Okay. All right. That's all we have for support for 8.2. So we do have support for all 3 sections today. So on Friday, my plan is to Zoom. My plan, I hope, my plan is to Zoom all the way from home on for Friday. Since nobody, I don't think I have any, I hadn't had any Friday students in a while. So I'm going to plan to Zoom from home. And that's for